Hi everyone, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on the time of the day that you have decided to watch this video. How are you doing? In this video tutorial, I'll be taking us through the process of developing our first API using Express, which is one of the sweetest frameworks on Node right now. It's one of the sweetest and the hottest. But before you proceed to watching this video, I have added an additional slide to the material we are using as guideline, which talks about the REST architecture. Right. So I've made it very brief so it doesn't bore you. So I've decided to talk about how REST API works because then it is very important to know some of the architectures of REST. Talking about sending requests, the body of a request, the HTTP verbs, and the response status that the server sends the server sends back to the client whenever there's a request, like the 200, the 400, the 500. So it's very important that you go through the REST architecture before you jump into this video. All right. So in this video, what will I be creating? I will be creating a simple Express API that returns the list of Nigerian universities and the courses. So we could extend it to include the cutoff for these universities. So we could have an API of Nigerian University, the cutoff, the courses, and yada yada yada. Yeah. So um, to make this, what do I need? What do I need to do, or what are the steps? So very simple here. I'll be using a particular approach that I've developed over the years because then when you're writing Express, I must mention to you guys again that Express is quite unopinionated. Yeah, so Express is unopinionated means that Express does not make it compulsory for you to write Express in a particular way. But then you have to be careful because the freedom could land you into trouble, especially when you're developing a large application. So let's head over to the Express website to see some of the examples that Express gives. Express. So I'm heading over to Express.js. So in Express.js, okay, so in Express.js API with blah blah blah. Okay, so this is the Express.js website. When I come to getting started, installing Hello World Express generates the basic static files, guide, API reference, advanced topics, building resources. Oh, okay, so the best way to start is coming to getting started. Okay, so they said we should create a directory npm init. Okay, entry point is index.jx. Next, moving to hello world. Okay, yeah, so now look at the way express.js writes their hello world example. So they are using express require. Okay, but then they are using app.get directly. So I have a problem with this method. So it's not bad when you're writing something very small, but then when you be writing something very large, this is not the best way to go about it because to a very large extent, when you're writing a large application with Express, there will be several engineers on the team, so you don't want to write some set of so you don't want to continue in this way because it will be unorganized at some point. So I have quite a number of example myself that I wrote this way. So let me head over to my if I head over to my GitHub. Um, so when I started learning Express, I used to write it this way too. But then so if I let me show you guys one of the examples that I have. If I come to repository, by the way, feel free to check out this repository that I'm about to open and you could fork it if you want to. So when I head over to repository, I have a particular backend API that I wrote then to serve as as a backend for a Netflix kind of application that uploads video to the server and then allow you watch the videos and all that. Okay, so where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Hmm, it's trying to load up. So so when you're watching the video, you could fast forward this part of the video. I just wanted you to see why I don't write Express that way anymore, because then it's not scalable, especially when we are trying to develop something large. Okay, so that's still loading. Okay, it's still loading, but anyways, let's continue. We'll come back to it when it finishes loading. All right, so to like begin this project that we're about to embark on, what do I need to do? So I'm going to minimize my browser window. I'm going to come to my folder where I want the application to reside, and I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Uni API. Okay. Oops. Okay. That's an error. Let me rename it. So how do I rename my windows? This is renaming my windows. Uni API. Okay. All right. So let me see if okay it hasn't finished loading. I don't know. Okay. Let's just continue. Okay, so I just called the folder Uni API. So what do I do is I'll open it and I'll cmd into it and I'll say npm inic. Okay, so it's going to ask me a series of questions. API for list of uni in, in, in IDE entry points index.js. Okay, I'm not adding to Git repository right now, but I can put my name. Yes. Okay, so now I'm going to code into the folder, and this is what I'm going to do. Okay, so all right. Okay, so coding into the code into the folder brings me here. So this is what I'm going to do. Okay, let me reduce this window so that it's within frame of my recording. So now I'm going to lay out my structure using MVC for consistency, except for the fact that I'm not going to have a view in this case, but I'm going to have a controller folder, controller. I'm going to have a controller folder. I'm going to have a model folder. I'm going to have another folder for data. I'm going to have another folder for routes. Let's call it routes. Yeah, I'm going to have, okay, so I have controller, I have data, I have model, and I have routes. Okay, so that's okay for now. And then the entry point, which is index.js needs to be created. Okay, so now we're getting to the interesting part. So I just created all my folders. So this is what I'm going to be doing to maintain the highest level of consistency. I'm going to use the same naming convention. So when I create a controller, I'll use the same name of the controller to create the model, and I'll use the same name of the model to create the route, so that the name is consistent across my entire file structure. So to get started with Express, we need to come to our terminal and we need to get some things installed. So we need to install npm express, npm express. We need to install Express. Okay, let me check if that stuff has finished loading. Okay, so I don't know, maybe it's with GitHub or my internet is not usually this slow, but yeah, let's continue. Okay, so let's not get distracted. So npm express, and then I could know whatever I'm installing by coming to my package.json folder, you see now I have Express. Okay, so another thing that is important that I need is the body passer to help me pass my body for my request. So npm I body PERSER npm I body passer. Okay, so body passer loaded. So everybody, I want people that are not necessarily on the server that my API is hosted to be able to access my API within their front-end application. So to do that, what am I going to do to do that? Um, to do that, CLS, I need to have a package called CURS. So we call it cors. So I'm going to say npm I cors first. Okay, that installs cors. Okay, all right. So if I was actually writing this entire project as a TypeScript project, to begin, what I'll say is import express express from express. But because this is a JavaScript project, so I'm going to cancel this out. I'm going to start with const, making a variable called express, and I'm going to say it is equal to require um, require express. So this express becomes the express that I've downloaded. I'm going to bring in const body passer body. Let's use snake casing parser, and I'm going to say it is equal to require as well. Sorry, IntelliSense is not always right all the time. Require, yeah, body passer. Okay, all right. So one more thing I'm going to bring in, I'm going to bring in const cors, and I would say it is equal to require require cors. Okay, now I'm going to say const app to enable me use Express. It could be anything, but in most cases I like to call it app. Const app equals Express as a function, so that this makes all the properties of Express available within my app. Yeah, so I'm going to say const app. No, sorry, no more. There's no money for const because you can only have when you are making when the moment you enter the keyword const, it means you are making this a constant. That means it's not changing anytime soon. So I don't need to declare it again. I just need to use it now. So awp, that makes some classes available here. So I'm going to say app.use express.json, which is very important. express dot json. Okay, and I'm going to say app.use cors as well. Okay, so I'm going to also say app.use body passer as JSON. This helps us pass JSON data in the body when we are making requests, as we are going to all see soon. Okay, so I think this is okay for now. Okay, so now I'm going to say const port equals to 4000, and that is because your server needs to run on a port. Every web server runs on a port. On localhost, it is mostly 3000, but because I have other applications running on port 3000, I've decided to make this server run on port 4000. So I'm going to say, so that I'll know that okay, so I can know when I start the server what port it is listening to and if the application has started. So it's always good for a start to say console.log what's the port, and then pass your console log as a callback function. So I'm going to say console.log. I'm going to say this app is running on port, which is port port. Okay, so before we fire up this server to like start the application, um, in most cases when you are running a node application, you it does not automatically listen to changes, but we can make it listen to changes by installing a package called nodemon. So I can easily just do npm I nodemon nodemon. Okay, so that would automatically help me listen to changes whenever I save and and the application automatically refreshes. So now that I have nodemon, I can come here to say start. So this will be the start command that the application listens to. I can say start index.js. Is this correct? Okay, what is wrong? Okay, there's a comma missing here. Okay, so this is it. So now look at let's try something. So let's say npm. Okay, so now okay, what's wrong? Okay, okay. So let's see node. So instead of saying node, now I can just say nodemon. So when I say node more, what happens? Ray. Okay, so it says port is 4000, function anonymous. Okay, okay. Ports. Okay, something is wrong here. Hmm. Ports 4000. Okay. Console.log. This app is running on port. Okay. What could have been wrong? So let's take a look at this again. Oh, okay. Sorry. This should not be console.log. This should be an express function to show us where the port is the application is listening to. So this should be app.listing. Sorry, not console.log. Okay, so app.listing. Okay, so now we have the message that says, hey, this app is running on port 4000. Okay, so now this means our server is on. This means our server is on. That's a very simple step, right? So like that, we've just created a server, and that server is listening on port 4000. Okay, but there are no routes or any API endpoints available on this application already. So to make that happen and to start developing APIs, what are we going to do? So firstly, let us create a default API that says something like, hello, the API service is now live, instead of just having, okay, so this is a console response to the server and not to the client. Yeah, so now let us make a response to the client to let the client know that the application is is live and the API service is working. So to do that, I'm going to create a test API. So I'll call it test API, so that whenever there is an issue, we have to we just call this test API, and if this test API goes through, we know that, yeah, okay, we are in business. Okay, so for this, I'm going to say cons express. Okay, so let's code smart. So in our index.js, we have this already. So cons express. So let's carry this and say, okay. So we might not be using the property of express directly here, but then let's just still leave it because we might have to use a part of it. So I'm going to say module dot export. Yeah. And I'm going to say dot test underscore API equals to is equals to async, because okay, so I've actually explained why we are using the concept of async awaits. Okay, all right. But then if you have any question, you could like just text me your question, or better still, just go through the documents that explains how um yeah, node is single thread, is single threaded, and is asynchronous. So asynchronous in this case means it could like process several requests together. So we'll see mode exports test API async. Then an express function always receives two parameter by default, which is a res, which simply means results or response, and then the req, which means request. Yeah, so you could spell it anyhow you want, but then it's a standard convention to use res and response and request, because to a very large extent that's what REST API is all about. It receives a response from sending in a request. So there is rec and there is rest. Okay, so now I'm going to say this closes, and what I'm going to say here is return response, because it's a default API. There's nothing much about it. So I want it to return a JSON, because you remember I told you guys REST API is all about returning JSON data. So this JSON data, I would say MESSAGE API is now live. Okay, so that is all we are going to be returning from this test API. So now what am I going to do? I mentioned I'm going to be consistent all through. So we need two routes. The main route, so I'll say the main route is index.js. That is going to be the route that consists of all other routes that we call in the main application. So now the other route I'm going to be having is test API.js, so that I'm consistent all through the entire app. So what we test API.js looks like. Test API.js is going to look like this. So I want this guy to be everywhere. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. So now the test API is going to look like const, because I exported, you remember, from test API, I did module.export, meaning it's not a default export. Yeah, I'm exporting as a module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to destructure and I'm going to pick that item. So I'll say API TES. Oh, so sorry, test API TEST API test API, because test API equals require, QUIRA. Require is just how we import in Express on if you are using JavaScript. Like I mentioned, if you were using TypeScript, it would have been import. So require controller slash what test API. So now immediately I get this, what will I do? I'm going to write module dot export again. Module export. This time I would say I could say it's a function. If that's the convention you understand, that's fine. I would say ROUTER. It takes in a router parameter and then goes to ROUTER router.get. So you need, this is why I said you need to read the document, because I mentioned about HTTP verbs. So majorly there are about 4 HTTP verbs that are like major. We have get, put, delete, post. Get is to help us get information. Post is when we have forms. Put is when we want to edit a form. And delete is when we want to like delete. There are other HTTP verbs, but these are the 4 HTTP verbs that makes up a CRUD operation, meaning create, update, delete. So I'm going to say this route will be hello, and I'm going to say it's coming from test API. But to be consistent, I love arrow function, so I'm going to change this convention. So instead of saying it is equals to function, I would say it is equals to this. And then because it is an arrow function with just one parameter here, I'm still allowed to do this. I'm still allowed to do it this way. It will still work. You can test that out, but then for consistency's sake, I'm going to do it like this. So yeah, we have this. Okay, so now that we have this test API router, what do? We need to have this test. We need to now import this test API router here into our main router, which is index.js. So what is this going to look like? So this is still going to look very similar to what we just had. So I'm going to copy this again. I'm going to say, okay, so now I'm going to say constructor now, constructor, which is express router this time. I'm going to say constructor equals to expre express dot router is a function. So I'm going to say const API test API test, which is the name, which is this guy. So I'll say test API equals to require it from where it is coming from, which is just a dot away because they are in the same location. So I'm going to say here. So now this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say module.exports again. This is just to be organized and then to be consistent. So I'm going to say module.exports as an arrow function equals to what? This. And I'm going to say API test API test API receives router router receives express router and it returns it return return router. Okay, so now let me quickly make a comment. So this, when I said module.export router.get hello, this will mean that what this will mean is that this is going to be accessible on http local host 4000 slash default route default, whatever the default route is, route, and hello. So we'll change this default route when we have a default route defined. So now that we have defined our route in test API, we have defined our route in index.js, what are we now going to do? We need to bring this app inside our main call point for our express.js app, which is index.js. So now what am I going to do? So what I need to do now to make this route work is I need to come here and import the route. Yeah, so I'll say const router equals require equals okay require the router from index.js, so which is available in router in route. Okay, it's available in route slash index. Yeah, so you guys can notice the pattern of consistency here. So everything that has to do with index is always index. Everything that has to do with test API is always test API. So when there's an issue with my test API, I could easily navigate on how to solve it. So there's a trace pattern. So I'll know, I'll check the controller, I'll check the route. If there is a model that bears animal, I'll check it. So that way, if any action has an issue, I could easily detect what the issue is. So, all right. So now that we have brought in constructor require router index. So what are we going to do to use this route? So I'm going to say app